Are we ready?
Okay. We are streamed.
This work training session is called to order. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. And I would like to recommend that we go into our board training initially and then recess out of our board training into a short meeting and executive session at the end of the board training. Do I hear any other changes or amendments to the agenda? If not, the agenda is adopted as amended. We will move on to our OSBA board training. Hello, Kristen.
Hi. Good to be here. You want me just to go ahead?
Yes, please.
It's on you.
All right. Thank you for having me. Good to see everybody. I'm Kristen Files. I'm the Director of Board Development at OSBA. I'm sure I have met some of you at conferences and throughout the years. I am pleased to be able to work with you on your rural scholarship project, which I know you took the board self-evaluation, and that will be part of tonight. We will go through that. I know you got the report that I sent you prior to our discussion tonight, and we'll go through that report. I sent some questions to you in advance that hopefully you had a chance to think about. We'll talk about those. We'll talk about what the report tells you, what that is good for, and then most importantly, we'll talk about what you want to do with that and how that may integrate into some work that you are wanting to look at in the future. And hopefully set a goal or two, because the board self-evaluation doesn't mean much. If I just hand it to you and you walk out with it, it really only means something if you make a plan for action. And so thank you for taking that. The goal is that it brings some change and gives you something to work on that is specifically board related for the next year. I would love to just go around the table and have introductions. I can't see the whole table, so I will just, maybe Pat, if we can start with you, and then wherever you are, you can go around from there. That would be great.
Okay, Pat Waranaka, I'm the board chair.
Dustin Martinson.
Don Blue.
Megan Robbins.
Gina White.
Ryan Hawkins, superintendent.
Maribel Ramirez.
Oh, come on.
Nick Hartley.
And Nick will be an incoming board member.
Great. And then it looks like we've got Jasmine on Google Meet, just like me.
Don't forget.
Great.
Yes, definitely me.
Okay. Thank you. I am going to go ahead and share my screen if I've got the ability to do that. Here we go. Second. Yes.
The other man share. Okay, good.
You should be seeing my screen. Okay, wonderful. I think you can. So we're going to go over this. The first thing I'm going to do, I know you got these questions in advance, so what I would like to do is go through these one by one, and then we're going to dive a little deeper into each of these questions. So by going through the report. So the first thing I would just like to put out to the group is, what did you observe when you looked through the report? And we're not looking for meaning at this point. My question to you is just, what did you see? Not interpretations, just observations. Anything that you just noticed.
The first thing that I noticed, Kristen, was when you looked at the front page that had the 12 standards and how we rated them, that of those 12, 6 had little red bars on them, which indicated that those were things that we need help with. And as I looked at those a little more closely, I noticed that some of them had to do with culture and climate, and that the others sort of spoke to, we're not using data as we could, that we're kind of inefficient in that area, or at least we feel insecure in how we use them.
Great. Any other observations you want to note?
I'll throw one out there, just,
Yeah.
the outside of it. I mean, overall, if you look at it, there's not one real big outlier on both sides, right? I mean, it's pretty small variance in there. I know it's a small sample size, that's what happens. But I related and I looked at, and I hope you got the strategic plan today. I apologize for that. There's a lot of things, but the things that we are the weakest in here, or the strongest, which we're proud of, actually is reflected in that. And so I like to see that alignment that, yes, that is kind of a really true area we need to be looking at, so.
Great. Great. Thank you. Anything else that are just observations at this point? Okay. So my next question then is, what meaning did you make of this? So as you looked at it and you were, thinking about what you saw, what did you turn that into in your head? What do you think these things mean?
I thought in part that we do feel that we are effective. We're an effective board. We're not accomplished, I guess is the proper term, but we do feel that we're effective when we look at all of these areas. So, but at the same time, we recognize we have a lot to learn.
Anything else? Okay, we can, so my next question would be then, what do you see as you look through this as the overall strengths and areas of improvement? And you can look at the front page for that. I mean, that's sort of the, you can sort of scan the rainbow of colors, but what, as you were looking through the whole thing, did you really see or interpret as the overall strengths and overall areas of improvement?
We feel very comfortable with how we are able to deal with the budgeting.
Yeah. That one was very strong. Anything else pop out for anybody on either side of that question? Nothing at this point? Okay. If you have, and if you don't have any, that's fine, but just wondering what questions do you have, if you have any, after looking at the data? Sometimes boards look at this and they, they have questions about, and we'll get to this, there is some incongruence there, of like, there are certain questions where it's the whole rainbow of colors, because somebody said, never or ineffective all the way up to accomplished. And so sometimes board members have questions about, I said this, what did somebody else mean when they said that? And we can talk about that as we go. But sometimes, as this is the question that I sent in advance, if you had questions after looking at the report, this is an opportunity maybe to surface them. So did anybody have any questions after looking at this?
Was it
No.
only the 7 of us that took this? Oh, 5 of us?
5 people took it, yeah.
Okay. 40% of how many of us?
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's where my mind's thinking is this, 40%, how many total of us was that?
yeah,
So great, thank you.
yeah. Absolutely. And then the last question that we will answer sort of at the end of this is, what do you want to do with this information, right? That is like, how do you want to proceed after seeing this? We're not going to answer this now. We'll answer this at the end of our session, but it's just something to keep in mind as we go through. What do you want to do with this? So looking then at this, you've got this in front of you. This is the front page. This is the overview. Looking at this. Sorry that it cut off. I know I sent this in the email, the word accomplished and the word ineffective. I'm not sure how that printed out that way. That got sent to me that way. I apologize for that. Hopefully that made sense in the email that I sent. But so looking just by the numbers, your overall strengths in order, your three top strengths were Standard 12, which is budgeting and financial accountability. That was the one by the numbers that you felt most strong in. Standard 2 was community engagement. That is the second place that you feel the strongest. And then Standard 1, which is vision-directed planning. And of course, you're working on that strategic plan. And so you may feel like, yeah, we're doing this right now. So those are the top three strengths that you rated yourself the highest in. Why did it do that? So I'm not sure why that popped up first. So what do these mean? Ignore that bottom one. So what does it mean to be like, what do all these things mean? So budgeting and financial accountability. This is about being good stewards of the money, right? So, this one is kind of, self-evident that the board is ensuring that the strategic educational goals of the district and schools are translated into reality. And that means, to the extent possible, you're aligning your resources with your strategic goals. Now, I know that, districts don't always have a ton of resources to align, with their goals, but to the extent possible, in any discretionary funding that you have, or when you can, have your strategic plan and move money toward those goals, that's what you're doing. Resources does not just mean money though, it also means time, it means effort, it means professional development, all of that takes resources as well. And then basing your resource allocation on student needs, district policy, and strategic goals. Community engagement then, that next one, is that all members of the community are important constituencies, right? And so those are your families, that's your staff, those are your students, and any community partners that you have a relationship with, that you're using what is reciprocal advocacy. That means that you're advocating for your students and their needs, and also that you may advocate for others for community needs as well, and so that they can advocate for you too. And having that strong partnership that builds that community engagement piece. I know that when Pat and I talked, there was some work about being stronger in community engagement. I think that's I believe that was part of your strategic plan as well. But looking at these meaningful conversations, system connections, feedback loops, how do you get that engagement with your community, and how do you define that? This is something that you said you feel strong in. And so that's a really good thing. And then vision-directed planning. This is that strategic planning. This is that, setting a vision for the district this is what we want for our students. This is aspirational and achievable. But looking at, keeping that North Star as student outcomes, but that North Star and those strategic priorities guide what you do. And they guide your board agendas, and they guide the accountability, and they guide what you talk about and what you focus on, and how you hold the system accountable. So your specific strengths, what I do with this report then is I go through and look at every question, and I to like bundle some questions together and show you like what I'm seeing in an analysis as specific strengths in places that are related. So what I saw when I looked at the theme or, you know, a relationship between questions 8, 82, and 84 is you understand your role in the oversight of the budget. You adopt a budget based on the district's strategic goals, student needs, and your ability to meet those needs. So those were all things that showed that you rated specifically as strong. Then there was another 3 questions that seemed to have a relationship or a theme, that you use a variety of sources of information to make informed decisions aligned with the district's vision and strategic goals, and you expect the superintendent to do the same. So that's great. So I know that, you know, using data was mentioned as maybe, you know, one of those things to focus on, but according to the, how you rated yourself, you're also seeing yourself as strong in using a variety of information and holding the system accountable, and your superintendent having that expectation for doing that as well, and that information be aligned to your goals. Sort of a practical thing, that the board members do not use their office for personal gain. They do not attempt to speak individually on behalf of the board, and promote positive change through dialogue and collaboration. So that is one of those, like, this theme is sort of the roles and responsibilities thing. And also that word culture and relationship building piece. 2 of those about like personal gain and speaking on behalf of the board. There are policies that are associated with those, and you know, basic roles and responsibilities. This is how we operate as a board, especially through policy. But that positive change through dialogue and collaboration is definitely a board culture thing that's really positive to be able to say. And then ensuring that the superintendent and staff understand their roles in creating a culture of high expectations throughout the system, which means that, you know, you as a board are working with the superintendent to hold, you know, expectations for him to pass on expectations for your students. That there is a culture that, you know, all students can learn. That's what we believe. All students can achieve at their highest level, and that everybody in the system knows their roles and responsibilities with respect to doing that. And I want to pull that out. That was sort of in one question, but that was highly rated, and I didn't want to not pull it out just because it didn't seem to have a strong relationship to another question. I want to pull that out. Any questions or comments on this part of the analysis?
I was just gonna say that I filled this out prior to having the strategic plan discussion, so I think my answers would probably be a little bit different with our strengths and focus, and even some of our weaknesses, knowing that we filled it out before we actually had that full discussion.
That's fair, and things change over time, right? Like depending on what you're working on, what you're doing. I know we started this a while ago, and you know, trying to get everybody to participate in this, and then we had to move some meetings around. And so when you take this, it does matter, and it does it may change over time. Like if you took this in the fall, you know, things happen over the spring and summer. So I appreciate that comment. Okay, so moving on to areas of improvement. This is where, and I put these in order too by the numbers. The area where you rated yourself as needing the most improvement was in innovation and creativity. The next one was standard 5, as pointed out, using data for continuous improvement and accountability. And then standard 6, cultural responsiveness. So, I don't understand this animation. What do these things mean? So, innovation and creativity. So, this is kind of the fun one. This is about being able to look at seemingly intractable problems, either new or old, and thinking about them in new ways. And sometimes boards are like, how do we do that when we're not allowed to to talk outside or collaborate outside of a board meeting. And, you know, there are definite ways to do that. You know, in 2020 and 2021, we all had to operate differently. We had to educate kids differently. We had to govern differently. We had to manage differently. And everybody solved different problems. And, you know, we see boards all over the state solving different problems right now and being innovative and creative, just like teachers are, just like, you know, admin are. And boards can really get creative in partnership with their superintendents. And so it's, you know, looking through the lens of, you know, without getting into management, of course, how can we be thought partners with our community, with our families, and with our superintendent in, you know, can we, in our role as board members, support to solve problems in a different way, maybe than we've tried before, within our limitations as a board, but, you know, still looking at the district vision, values, and goals, but encouraging those new ideas and differing perspectives, which sometimes means bringing folks into a question or an issue that haven't been heard from before. The next one, using data for continuous improvement and accountability. That one is a little bit self-explanatory as well. And, you know, when we say data, we don't just mean state testing data or even just academic data. Data means information. So that can be financial information. It can mean like family survey information. Of course it can mean, you know, student achievement information, but it can be any source of information that lets you know like how you're doing on your strategic priorities or anything else that is being measured to show how students are doing or how the district is doing. Like, what is it that your superintendent wants to bring to you to show how things are going in the district? And so having multiple sources of that to look at successes and areas of improvement. There is some research that shows that boards who also look at all outcomes, like positive and negative, and talk about those things in public, students do better in those districts because we're shining a light on everything, not just the good things, right? We're looking at everything. It's just honest and transparent. And boards and districts that are, you know, willing to face that in public and be really transparent about that have better student outcomes. And the last one, cultural responsiveness, ensuring that you understand, that everybody, you know, in the district understands that students are, you know, come to us in their whole selves in a variety of ways, that diversity is celebrated and welcomed, and that students feel welcomed and safe, and that the board responds to that through policy and practice, and that barriers to access are reduced and eliminated, and that part of that is effective community engagement, and that is built upon the diversity of the community and the strengths of that. And the board recognizes that the diversity of the student body and staff and the community is a strength. Any questions or comments on this, and these being the areas that you identified as wanting more improvement in?
You mentioned the term thought partners, and in some aspects that's really hard to do, because when you share a thought, sometimes it becomes more like, this is what I want, instead of this is what is, you know, something that is out here that we need to discuss or talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that building that relationship, I mean, so there is, I think there are a couple of ways to address that. And one is, it can be, it sort of depends on the context in which you are talking about those things. And so sometimes I know when there are like private conversations between board members and superintendents, that can be a little confusing as to what is a directive and what is an idea, right? And I'm not to say that's what happens in your district, I'm just saying like that can be, there can be a little bit of a gray area in there. And of course, you all know that, that no individual board member can direct the superintendent, it's the whole board that gets to do that. In my experience, where there can be some of that gray area reduced is when those things are on board meeting agendas or work sessions, or you schedule a work session to go over something in depth. I am on a board as well. I'm on the Tiger 12s school board, and that is just as an example. That is what we do when we're doing that innovation thing: is schedule a work session to go over something so that staff can come and present to us. Here is the issue, and like we would like to bounce this off of you and get your thoughts and ideas, but there is a common understanding because the culture has been created that board members are not there to pick out strategies. We're there to help do some thinking from the board level governance policy and ask questions. And say, in the end, how can we support as a board? Not to say, hey, superintendent, you know, like, go do this like management thing. Unless it's, you know, unless it's something like, hey, we need to amend the budget, or we need to do this big policy thing, and then that's a board role. But in my experience, talking about things at the board level tends to maybe mitigate that that confusion or that potential confusion between ideas and directives.
The other thought that I have is when it comes to cultural responsiveness, you know, I sometimes think that, I mean, our community is largely Hispanic, and I sometimes get the feeling that we do not hear from our Hispanic community as well as we could hear. And, you know, that's, to me, that is an issue. That you can't respond to something you don't know is happening, or is a problem, or is something that someone cares about.
How do you do, like, and just, this is a big, broad question, but what does community engagement look like in your district? Like, how do you do community engagement? Is it, you know, a hope that folks come to board meetings and do public testimony? Do you have events that people come to? Do you go out to community events? Do you have liaisons to community groups? Like, what happens? What does community engagement look like?
I'll answer this one. You know, talking kind of building level and board level, right? I mean, it's a mix of all of those things, right? Where we've really been proactive this year to go out and seek those engagement opportunities. Like, I mean, and I use this example a lot, that a large part of our community work in the sheds. And so this year we've actually, during break time, we go there, bring some donuts, right? And then be able, I mean, going to where people are, essentially. And I know our board, now they set up tables at conferences, right? Because we know parents are going through. So this year we had board members at, you know, every building, every conference at night to welcome families in. And I would say, so we do a myriad of things at kind of all modalities, right? We do the surveys, we try to invite them in, but I think this is probably the first year the board has not sat on, you know, kind of sat on their hands and just said, well, we invited them, right? And so being very proactive in trying to engage our community in authentic ways. So.
Then how
And
successful?
it does take time also. I know you know this, like, this is not me saying anything new to anybody, but like, it also does take time to build a system and to build relationships, right? I mean, and so I think that it's, you know, great, to start doing those things and to like take action and activities as a board, and I don't know what kind of results you saw from that, if like maybe you got some really good feedback about stuff that was really helpful. I mean, I would love to know. And likely you will see that grow over time too. Like, how did that impact, how did those activities and being part of those things as a board, how did that impact the decision making that you did, or whatever you were looking for as far as engagement, how did that impact that?
So I mean, I would say we've gotten more feedback on our system than ever before, right? And from different places. And I really do think it's driven, and you'll see a lot of it in our strategic plan, right? Is so I mean, like you said, we're still developing and growing and getting it out there. And I think this is the first time most people have met the board and know, like, who are you? Why do you have a table? What are you going to give me for free? And so it actually turned into, just really, really good conversations. But that's literally how we had to, hey, come get a raffle ticket, right? But no, I would say that we're gathering more feedback than ever. But we still got a long ways to go. But that has driven kind of a lot of things. And actually, people we talk to, and Jasmine is really good at this, is, she has a different part of the community she connects with, is say, hey, I went down and talked, and this is what I got. So we are adding more voices into the conversation.
We are also.
Which is great, which can only benefit what you do and the decisions that you make.
We are also doing a lot more things bilingually. Our announcements go out, bilingually. Our board meetings are not conducted bilingually, but there are moments when we utilize translators so that our constituents can understand.
I don't think I've looked, is your website translated, or has the ability to be translated, like with a button?
Yeah, it's just that button up top, you can translate it, yep.
Great. And it takes a while to figure out like what works as far as community engagement, right? I mean, that is an ongoing, ever evolving thing, right? We try something and it's like, we thought that might connect or resonate, and then next year we try something else or we add. And so I think that's great that you all are out there and working to connect with the community. Anything else about these pieces? Okay. So again, as far as specific areas of improvement, I just sort of looked at, by the numbers. There weren't like super terrible individual questions, so I just pulled out the ones that I wanted to draw your attention to. There was only one set that seemed to really be partnered with another question. So, and this is really common, the board regularly establishes performance goals for itself and has a process to review policies for cultural responsiveness and bias. The first part of that, being that the board regularly establishes performance goals for itself, generally has to do with taking a self-assessment every year, which most boards say, like, we don't do that because they haven't done it before, and this is the first time they do it, or whatever, or haven't done it before, so not super surprising. But that second part was also, you rated that a little lower. The next one was the board's strategic goals and policies ensure that employees fit into the culture and core values of the district. What that does not mean is that like you would expect the superintendent or whoever's doing the hiring to screen people out. That's not what that means. What that means is that you are that folks know what you believe in when someone is like if you believe that all students can learn and achieve, that folks that are coming into work for you understand that, and they can onboard knowing what the values of the district are, and can buy into that, right? Like if you've got high expectations for students and you can support those, and you have values of a welcoming, safe, high-achieving environment, or whatever it is that you would want to say, that that people coming to work for you would also share those and can be onboarded in that way, that the values of the district can be made clear to them. And then the board uses data to identify discrepancies between current and desired outcomes, so a gap analysis, right? And that was the other one that you rated low. Any comments on that? Okay. So then I get a report that I'll pass on to you because it's kind of funny looking. But I also get a report that talks about the areas of congruence and incongruence. So areas where you are most aligned as far as how you answer questions, and then areas where you're least aligned. So, and that doesn't mean aligned positively, it means just aligned. So you could all rate something in red as ineffective, but if you all rated it the same way, you're congruent, right? So this just means agreement. So the area, the standard in which you were the most congruent was standard 12, budgeting and financial accountability. In this case, that was your highest rated standard, and so you were all mostly in agreement that you did that well. So that's just agreement. The area of highest incongruence was standard 10, innovation and creativity, meaning that there was kind of, by the numbers, there was a lot of disagreement as to whether or not, like how well you were doing in that standard. So while that was one of the lower ones, there was also quite a bit of disagreement in there. So that might be something for consideration of discussion, because there is, with all questions and with all standards, potentially some calibration of, what a question meant or how you read it. That's always a consideration in any survey. But also being curious about, like, what did my fellow board members think? Like, why did you rate it this way? And looking at, what is the thinking behind why we're coming from different perspectives. I like to point out specific areas of incongruence, and so what I do when I look at this is I pull out all the rainbow questions, like where were you literally in every category if you were, and these are the questions that you were in every category. And so one is question 39, which is the board communicates to the public how decisions are linked to student data. So this went all the way from never to always, essentially. And so, there's someone who thinks that the board never does this, and there's someone who thinks the board always does this or does it really well, and both in between. And so I think, as I read through these, all of these are ripe for discussion. The next one is the board ensures data used in decision-making is disaggregated, culturally representative, and provides the ability to monitor strategic goals. That is about setting an expectation that that's the data that you want and can ask for. The next one, the board ensures district employees, again, representative of the values and culture of the community. That was a rainbow question. The board sets meeting agendas that allow it to proactively identify and explore strategic issues. The board incorporates flexibility into its plans to enable the district to move in unforeseen directions in response to unexpected events. That's one of the standard 10 questions, which is innovation and creativity. And then board members come to meetings familiar with the agenda and prepared to discuss, ask questions, and take action on agenda items. So this is just about meeting preparation, where, somebody felt that never happened, and somebody felt it always happened, and everything in between. So sometimes, I will say, before I ask what you would like to discuss on this list, sometimes there are variances in these questions, A, because of calibration about the meaning of a question, but also because maybe somebody has not experienced something like this yet. So, for example, if there were a question on here, just as an example, about the budget, focus on for goal areas, and I'm gonna present that to you in a minute as a possibility. But I want to just like leave this up here for a minute and ask if there are one or more of these that you look at and would like to know based on how you rated it, why, or like if you have curiosity about like what your other board members were considering and their perspective when they looked at these questions too, and if you want to explore any of these further. So thoughts about these?
We are a very quiet group this year.
Yeah.
Well,
What seems important out of this list?
Probably the last one seems pretty important to get things moving along effectively.
Yeah, great. Does anybody want to share their thoughts on that last one? What they were considering when they answered that question?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't even remember the questions anymore. I took it and I was done and checked it off my list, but I don't remember what I was thinking when I did that.
Well, and even if you don't remember what you rated at the time, you can certainly look at these and see what you think now, right? Like, how would I answer that question today? And if, if you talk about these and there's still like, well, my perspective is different, like some of these may be important to discuss. I wonder about the second one. Just an idea, given that data was mentioned and the culturally responsive piece was mentioned, that second one kind of combines both of them, right? So looking at data, ensuring it's disaggregated, culturally representative, and provides, and then there's the whole strategic goal piece in there. And so I wonder, like what folks might have been, unless you don't remember, or what you might think of that now, be thinking about using data in that way and how the board receives that data, what you think you do with that. That might be one to discuss as far as how do we think we're doing. With that, could we be looking at that better? Or if somebody's like, no, we do that. And then the other one that I wonder if you, just a suggestion that you may want to discuss is the fourth one. Looking at your meeting agendas that allow you to proactively identify and explore strategic issues. So as you proceed with your strategic plan, obviously that would be the goal. But as of right now, there seems to be a lot of variance of thought on how that happens right now. And again, there may be some calibration in the question, but I'm throwing it out there to see if that's something that you may want to discuss how you manage those conversations or whether that comes up. So a couple of ideas, but also that last one, as you brought up.
I'm just gonna say on that last one, when we used to get packets mailed to us, I was a lot better at reading them than when everything became digital.
That is true. I mean, when you have a packet in front of you, it's a lot more urgent than when it's on a computer and you just push a button and it turns off.
And I will say with the links, like I'll click the link to see the attachment, and then I can't just go back. I have to go back to the email to open it back up, to get back into it, and it's a pain. And if the attachment list is too long, I have to like scroll, and sometimes I can't even get to the last attachments if I'm using my phone. So I physically need to go to a laptop, and I don't do that often, because that's too much work.
I'm completely the opposite, but it's easier for me to do it digitally, but then, of course, I spend most of my life doing that right now, so. Right.
And it does seem, go ahead.
I'll just add them on that.
Oh. It does seem like that second bullet point is almost like a three-dimensional thing, like, you know, you have the decision-making and the culturally representative, and then, like, the data and strategic goals, like, all that is like a lot to encompass in one question. I don't know, it's just, that kind of makes sense to me why it would be incongruent.
Right, there is an expectation there that data is, telling a big story, right? Does anybody want to share their thoughts on that question? I think that's a good point to make, that there's a lot of expectation in that question for what data can represent. But there were folks out there that thought, you know, like, this is great, we get this, you know? I mean, if there's anybody that wants to share, like, yeah, this is why I agree with this, or this is why I don't think this happens, I mean, I think this is a good time to do that.
I think with that particular question, it's sometimes the feedback we get isn't something that you can monitor. It's more of like the feeling that we get from the community, like the district is headed in the right direction. How do you measure that? How do you get that data? You don't have a bunch of screaming angry people in your board meeting. Like, but how do you prove that you've met that goal?
Right, depending on what the goal is, right? Yeah. Anything else on any of these that piques your interest?
I feel like the third one was, there was a situation that I think maybe was the forefront of some people's mind when that question was asked. And now that it's settled down, I don't think that would even be on that list.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So now we get to the question, what do you want to do with this? So I will show you, I always come, instead of just throwing this question out to you, I like to come with some suggestions, and these may either resonate or not. But I like to, you know, come with something as a conversation starter, so that I'm not just coming to you with like, let's just cut this out of whole block, or that's the expectation. I also know that, you know, there are some things that like maybe you're aiming at or working on, and I've had a couple of conversations about that, and so I wanted to take those into consideration as well, and try and match up what I believe that you're working on with some of the things I saw in this report. So here is what my understanding is of the things that you may be working on, which is strengthening staff, family, and community engagement, strengthening local, regional, and state advocacy, strengthening cultural responsiveness, which showed up in this, although you gave yourself some relatively high marks in this, and developing more clear strategic priorities and clarifying the district's vision, which I also know that you're working on. And so these are my not strong recommendations, but just some ideas to start a conversation. And what I'm going to show you is some ideas for us to talk about. And then I like to say, here's where you can leverage a strength that showed up in the survey. to address the areas that we need improvement. Like, we have to acknowledge where we're doing well. So, so I want to, say that the first thing I want to do is just show you, like, that you've identified some of these things as strength. Like, so again, my understanding is that these are some of the things that you want to work on. The only area of improvement that that I noted here was in that cultural responsiveness. The rest of these were you identified as strengths. But these were some possible goal areas that I wanted to just share as a point of starting a conversation. And then I'm hoping what we can do then is that you can engage in a conversation about if any of these resonate or where you want to take this. This could be this could be a starting point. So I know you're in the mid, I'm not sure where you are. Like, Ryan, I know you sent me that strategic plan, and I know it says draft on it. So like, I would be really interested to hear like where that is in the process. But if you've not yet included community and staff, or have the conversation, like what's the board's role and what are the gaps as you review the district's strategic goals? Because one of the things that came up in the survey was like that gap analysis piece, like using current data to look at where you want to be. And so you can also embed that part into your role in the strategic plan implementation, which is not the details, right? That's not the strategies. But when you're looking at what is the board's role in the overall monitoring of the strategic priorities, there's a big picture gap analysis that you can do and monitor. And this is, if you're involving community and staff, and still, unless you already have, you can use that strength that you've identified in responsiveness to community feedback, because you identified that when you get it, you're responsive to it. And you identified that you as board members are visible in the community, and you did identify that you utilize data. So those three strengths, I think, like, you can utilize those to respond to or look closely at this. Now, I also want to note that I don't know exactly where you are in that process, so this may be one that doesn't maybe quite resonate because you're further along than I know that you are. The next one would be committing to building relationships with local, regional, state partners to advocate for district needs. And one of the strengths that you identified was about promoting positive change through dialogue. So also, I would say visibility in the community as an identified strength would count there as well. And so if you are looking to build more opportunities for advocacy, looking at, how do we split up? Who can, what do our personal and professional networks look like? What is the board's role in building relationships with, local community partners, or how do we advocate for ourselves? What does that look like over here? And then the third one would be developing a process to consider decisions through that lens of cultural responsiveness and bias, possibly involving community staff when appropriate. So some of that may be policy related, some of that may be practice, and some of that, if you're developing a process for doing that, there is an opportunity to get, community feedback on how you do that. And I'm seeing strengths there as, you identified a strength of creating a climate of caring and respect that you said that you were good at doing, and basing decisions on student needs that you identified as a strength as well. So that's another idea. And I always say, or pick something from the incongruence slide, because there are things there to consider and talk about maybe. So those are some ideas. That said, like I said, this is a starting point for a conversation. All of these, some of these, or none of these may resonate with you, or something could be like, yeah, that's a good seed, and I would want to change it in this way. And so what I would like to do is, because I don't want to leave you with nothing to do. So what I would like to do is open up the conversation to say to you, what would you like to do with the information? And what would you like to commit to?
I think like what you mentioned, Pat, that we have a dominant Hispanic community in town. I can see one of the goals to improve on that cultural responsiveness so that we are making the greatest impact for not only thinking all students, but really thinking all students, if that makes any sense. And that was, you said the second bullet point? No, on the previous slide, sorry. Maybe it was the third one, I don't remember.
Which slide?
Oh, third one. Right there, the third one there.
Yeah. So you're thinking that community building, cultural responsiveness, like those two things embedded as you started to do work as a board?
Yeah, and especially with like what Ryan said, you know, going out to the onion sheds with donuts, meeting parents where they're at, making them feel like they don't have to come to us, we can go to them where they're at and build that relationship.
What do you think, board? How does that resonate? What does that sound like to you?
Well, I think with our community, that's just gonna be something we're always gonna have to really work on. And so I agree with 100%. I think that's something we always need to work on, improving. Because at the end of the day, we can do everything in the world. It's about how do we get those people to respond to us. If they don't, it's always a problem. So, any way we can find to help gain that response is a win.
Great. Other thoughts?
I think you could use technology to try to understand why they don't respond currently. Are we picking the wrong times for them to come? Are we not asking them the right questions? They're not going to get involved. You know, we're talking about a Hispanic population that works a lot manually. How can we find ways that they want to engage with us? They can, they're willing. You can meet them there, but you got to find out what their priorities are, what they want for their children. So I think you do that through surveys, you can do that through simple. I mean, we try to meet them where they're at.
I think identifying that's important though, because right, I mean,
Why
what
are
is
they
what is
using
what
this?
is working, right? I mean, that was, I mean, I think it's board, like, you know, what would work? Asking, like, how could we get your feedback, right? I mean, we send out surveys, we may get 100 parents out of, you know, a couple thousand, right? And so we hear, well, they don't like long service, you know, it's, well, it doesn't come up well on the phone, so that's the only way they do it. And so I think it's a conversation that as a board, we need to say, hey, we need to go out and authentically, like, ask them. Like, we need to know how to get you engaged, because you're right, they work manual hours on it all the time, right? Like, do you want to at 9 o'clock at night, you know, fill out this survey for us, or it's like, I'm tired, I don't want to do this, and so what would be a better way? And I mean, the question is like, that's something we have to do as Donnie said, right? Is like, we're always going to have to work on that, but like I said, gotta find out why.
And
Yeah.
I do notice that, like when I've gone to the PAC meetings, they're full, the boardroom is full of families. Not even just parents, but they bring their younger kids, childcare's provided, and there's great turnout. But we've come, we've invited them to board meetings, and then it's like crickets, like we don't ever see the families, other than if the children are being recognized as student of the month. But how do we really get that buy-in? How do we get that participation, and we know they're coming to evening meetings already for the PAC meetings, but maybe it's just collaborating a little bit more with that group and saying, hey, let's maybe combine, hey, your next PAC meeting is actually gonna be part of the board meeting. And I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out there, but I do see where they are showing up, where there is buy-in already, but how do we get them to take the next step to be more active as, with the school board?
But on that same point, we don't get a lot of feedback from the community in board meetings anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter what culture we're talking about. My feedback comes from people who pick up the phone and call me, who see me in the store, who see me at church, you know, all over the place. It's generally not board meetings. So I think the key is you get to know your community. So you're approachable. So when you're out and about, you're approachable. And how do they know Dustin's just fine to talk to? He doesn't care if you give him a call or run into him.
Can I throw out an idea really quick, Kristen, kind of to sum up?
Of course.
And I bring this back to the strategic plan, right? So this has been my life for you. So I've been creating it. I look at the strategic plan, there's 4 areas, and I think that you guys have already identified in your survey like very specific strategies in those areas that would fit nicely into this, right? So if you look at, I look at academic excellence and student success, right? You guys have already said, hey, something that we want to focus on is using student data to help inform decisions. And so part of it is the board is going to be reviewing data, right? Student data to help inform decisions. I mean, that's how you guys are doing, saying, and keeping me accountable, right? And then obviously it goes downhill. But I mean, yeah, so I think on all the areas that Kristen has identified, like here's the variances, here's that. I think they lay in every one of these areas, right? I mean, fiscal and innovation, right? That was something that was only a strength and a weakness at the same time. Community engagement, I mean, that's, I think, like I said, that'll be always a goal of ours, and you've already identified what that means. The word I'm trying to kind of shoehorn in there is employee investment engagement. And that, I don't know on that one yet, but anyways, I think you guys have already identified the light is right in here, that now we're not 2 separate things. We're like, here's the overall strategy, here's what the board's doing, just for you to know. Because I'm gonna tell you what the district's doing, and the principals are gonna tell you what the buildings are doing, and the teachers are in all of these areas, and we're gonna see board, district, building, classroom. So you'll see all that in there. So that's just my recommendation. You've already identified it, it fits well in there to be like, because at the top, leaders from the board or to the classroom, that shows it. So, yeah, that was my idea.
That's great. That's great. And I think, you know, like, ideally, you know, what this does is show you, okay, like, what are we doing well? And if you can marry this with your strategic plan, and it's always, you know, one of the things I'm always saying to boards is, what is the board's role? What is the board's role? What is the board's role, right? And as you're looking at your strategic plan, and you're looking at those pillars, cornerstones, or priorities, whatever you're calling them, what is the board's role in all of these things? You know, an opportunity to look at what are the things that we wanted to work on anyway, which you're currently talking about, right? You're having a whole discussion right now about like community engagement and a specific, you know, potentially specific area of the community, but then also what are we good at, and then how do we use those things that we're good at to keep identifying what's the board's role and what can we do then in each of these areas, because we've identified what's the board's role in each of our areas, in each of these strategic priorities. And then I think like, then that's how you can go about setting your goals for your own performance, right? Like, and then that also overlaps with what is our work as part of our strategic plan. And I wonder, like, when is your opportunity to do that? Like, when would you do that as a board? Do you like a work session? Do you have a retreat? Like, what is
to the board 3 times for feedback. We've given it to the staff, both in presentation and survey a couple times. We're on the 4th draft of it, you know, getting feedback and kind of back and forth with the community. And then so we're in the like close to final stage, and then getting it back out to the community as the final, like, here's everything you said, does this look like it, you know, matches what we want? So we're really close to that final product on it. But yeah, so we've gone back and forth multiple times, and then just got more and more feedback, and just like started zoning in, like, this is what's important. So we're close. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And then, so then your process as a board for determining, like, what is our role as a board, and how do we then, you know, do our work as a board, including monitoring, right? When does that happen? Like, what would you do? Or do you know that yet? Like, do you have a retreat in the summer? Like, when do you figure out what you do?
Good question.
Great question. That's what we're figuring out. Ice cream social. Sorry. That's a joke. I'm sorry.
I think that's why that is.
It could be absolutely, yeah. I have a conversation, but I'll tell you about it.
Do you have a summer retreat planned or something like that?
Not yet, but I know that's something that we're interested in doing, and so yeah, we don't have that yet. We want to kind of springboard off kind of the goals, and then kind of then meet on the next time to really start diving into each of those. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, so my recommendation, again, just recommendation, but like, I think, you know, what you can do with this document, again, you know, it is meant to help you say, like, hey, here's what we need to work on, here's what we're good at. And if you specifically are at the point where you're almost ready to finalize your strategic plan, which is great, then this is a tool to help you figure out when you get to that, what is the board's role process. You know, like, here's what we said we wanted to work on, and we've got another source of data to help us figure out what we wanted to work on. And just as Ryan was saying, like, how are those things already embedded in the priorities that we have set? And so maybe that can help you, like, define those goals easier, faster, more specifically. And these are the things that we're already good at. So, like, what are the strategies that we already employ that can help us meet those goals? And I would also, like, pick really discrete things that have, you know, timelines on them and measurable activities. And then don't give yourself too much to do, right? Because you're going to be doing other things as well. But if you do have something like a summer retreat or any meeting in the summer or a work session, or a good chunk of time on a meeting before school starts, I would really recommend setting some time to set some goals using this document in your strategic plan. Thoughts on that?
I would agree with you. I mean, like I said, I think you use both of these documents as guide rails for us, right? And saying, hey, now we know, kind of, we have all this feedback, now we're gonna be operating in here, right? We're gonna use that to make sure that we keep going in the right direction. So, I really do think we have some pretty good information that will lead to good goals.
Good. Good. Do you have, that's what we want to bring you tonight. I'm really glad to hear where you are in your strategic planning process. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. Is there any other information that you wanted to talk about as far as the, I know you've got more meeting to do, as far as the self-evaluation goes that came up for you that you want to think about, or that is like spinning off now that you want to discuss? more money left in your rural scholarship that needs to be used before June 30. But if there's anything else that you need from me that you want to utilize those funds for, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help or whatever, or give some time to anything that you might be doing or need something for. We can talk about that offline. But I can send you this if you want this presentation. It's got more information in it than your report does, and so that you can have that. And is there anything else you would like from me after this session?
I would think that once we saw, we're able to put what you've got there and what our strategic plan is, put them together and discuss them, that it would be nice to come back and bring this to you, or bring it to you just for another set of eyes to see, you've got obviously a lot more experience than we do as far as how districts move. So, I think that would be helpful.
I'd be more than happy to do that.
As long as we do it before the 30th of June.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be more than happy to help with that. And if it's sort of like desk work or something, we can also figure out a way that let's talk offline. If it takes a little longer than June 30, we can figure out something. It's an accounting thing, so we can talk about that. So I really want to support you, so we can figure something out. So yeah, let me know. I would love to be involved in that. That would be supportive, and maybe Ryan, maybe you and I can connect about timeline and all of that, or what.
That's what I was gonna ask you, if you had some time, either tomorrow or next week, so you and I could just kind of chat.
Yeah. Why don't I send you some times for next? Well, I do have time tomorrow. I'll email you right now.
Oh, thank you.
After we hop off. And then we can chat, and let me know if you need anything. In the meantime, thank you for taking this. I think this is I think it can be useful to you in an ongoing way, and I can let you get to your meeting if you don't need anything else from me.
We're good.
Okay?
Any other questions, folks?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks
Thank you very
everybody.
much,
Thank
Kristen.
you.
Bye.
Hi, Devin. Graduation, right?
Did
So are we going to transition into executive session? And so is that what you're thinking, Mrs. Moraka?
First of all, do we want to do any discussion on this before we move on? We've all got sort of the outline of the district priorities that Ryan set up. And what is your preference, Ryan? Do you want us to give you feedback on what we?
Yeah. More feedback on it. This is more digestible than that PowerPoint that we saw, right? And but yeah, any sort of feedback. And I was thinking about I could, like I said, take these for you and just do some rough goals in each section that you guys can give me some feedback on. Maybe so if you guys want, take this, give me some feedback. I could add to the bottom of this for you and attach another one with just some very, very rough goals, and you guys could be I just wanted to kind of start that thought process with you.
It's I guess my thought is even more than jumping into this right away, because we've been working on this a little longer, right? I'd say let's refine this and then build this into it once we get this refined. So it's for example, strategies, and I don't know why this particular one caught my eye, but it just happens to be where I'm leaning. So you've got goal, increase staff longevity, improve staffing practices, and enhance staff quality, and then you've got strategies. Some of these, it's for one of these strategies, high attendance for staff. don't we kind of need to break that down even more? I mean, because we can say, we want staff to be here and have high attendance, but what is it specifically? What is the specific strategy that needs to be implemented to make that happen? You know,
I even wrote something right here about the same question.
cool.
And I said, how do you get admin to get staff to be enthusiastic about their purpose?
Right. Because I mean, you can talk to staff all you want, but if they don't want to be there, they don't want to be there. So there's got to be some motivation. That we want to be there. We want to be teaching students. We want to be present. I mean, you know, it's been a struggle, especially since we went to a 4-day work week. So how do we get? I like it's in the strategy there, but what's the actual strategy?
Well, and that's part of it that we're breaking down is the district and the buildings, right? So we're giving the overall, like, how are we have that, how are we going to increase staff attendance? And one way is making this work. And so how do we do that? And I think the board has already proactively started to go do that, right? Is saying, hey, we're gonna match the areas in the calendar, we're going to make pay attractive. We are going to, you know, not require as many. I mean, you guys have been doing those things on the outside already to do that, and so our job is now making it more specific, like June 3rd, as we know, right? We want our families to, I mean, there's all those little things that we're doing, but what we have to do is do exactly what you said, identify exactly what it is. How do we, so is the staff attendance, is it a calendar issue? You can now say no. Is it, you know, I mean, so it's a climate thing, and so one thing that we know in the business, right, is when student achievement comes up or people are being more successful, right? I mean, and so we're actually starting to see that kind of roll through. So no, I just that you're exactly right.
Have we put a survey out to staff? Like, what do you want to see to make this a good place to work? I mean, you're gonna get more pay, more time off. You know, that's just human, right?
3-day work week.
Yeah.
Right, 3-day work week. But I think people
So
will,
I would say yes.
Yes.
you will get a percentage of the staff who says, all right, these are the hard conversations that need to be had to make this a better place. I've got to give a massive shout out to Principal Pratt. I mean, you drive up, drop your kids off, he's got music playing. Sometimes he's dressed up, you know, but he's got music playing. The last couple of days, there's been some kids out front.
Yeah.
Looks like they're dancing around to the music. Like,
A welcome
you,
group.
yeah, you drop. It is such a welcoming place to drop kids off to,
Yeah.
and that I have to think that helps the kids' attitudes. So what can we do that's going to do the same thing for teachers that he's doing for kids? And maybe other schools have some things going on inside the school that I don't see, but he's killing it.
And I think you've identified one of the things that goes back to Nick's comment as well, like maybe getting that survey out there.
Right.
Give us that feedback, like, I mean, being very specific, like, what can we do to make this a better place for you and your family?
Right. Yeah. I don't think I necessarily want to give them like questions. What about this? What about this? What about this? Let's let them take some initiative of what do they really want and write it out for us, not pigeonhole them into, we can do these 3 things, which one do you like?
Pick one of them. Yeah, you pick the least painful of all of
Right.
them.
Do you guys do Qualtrics?
Yeah, we've done them, yeah. The problem is it's dying, right? Because we don't do anything with it. And we know.
Because it will self-analyze like all the data. Like,
And we get it, unfortunately, I mean, we go, yay, yep. Well, when we go through the pain of, they're having a bad day, they don't know what they're talking about, right? And then the next thing, so anyway, the problem is our action. Like, I'll be honest with you, it's like the follow through of that, like, if, that's part of it, is saying, hey, you know, we want a 3-day work week, that's overwhelming. Not saying we're gonna do that, but we address it and say, hey, we appreciate hearing that, so saying that, you know, maybe finding more time for you guys to do. And so anyway, that was when we were going through the strategic plans we talked about. We looked at what makes feedback in those things or the feedback loop effective. And that's always getting back to them. Okay. Thank you for filling out that survey. We really appreciate it. You know, can you tell me more about this? That makes you say, wow, they're actually listening to me, and then come back again. And so anyway, that's an average.
You'll get used to it, Nick, that's what I do. So that-
I think that data, if it was analyzed, I mean, there's lots you could do with that. I mean, you could do peer-to-peer, you could do student-to-teacher group, you could do parent-to-teacher, you could gather lots of data on performance.
Do something.
Yeah, that's, and then act on it,
Yeah.
using the data. That seems to be about the spot where it's not we fall down, it's what do we do with it?
Well, and that's your red and your yellow all the way throughout this is data utilization. So,
Wait, what was that question again? What did we say? It was, what can we do to make this a better place?
Of what the new place for adults.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm taking notes, so.
Perfect.
So for our strategic plan, we did put out a bunch of surveys and we are looking at that data, and that is one of the things that's driving our goals and our strategies with that, is really taking a look at what the data is telling us. Some of the results were kind of surprising because I thought, hey, I thought we were doing good in this area, But like Brian said, then taking that feedback to our staff, saying, hey, here's what we saw, here's what we're talking about now, thank you guys for being honest about these things, and here's what we need to do next. So I think we're doing a much better job at really taking the data and trying to make changes using that information.
I would say overall, like, we're doing a better job as the board. You guys are doing an amazingly better job, right? I mean, and you see it all the way through. But as we see on this, like, we're not there yet. We need to continue to push forward, and we need to keep asking questions. We need to do that. So that's when we give you again all promise.
And I'm looking at this, providing additional social emotional learning and training, and that, you see that kind of like spilling over into the one about student success. Because I think it just depends on what SEL training you're giving. Because I think sometimes as teachers, we need that jar, like back to why we're doing things. And like one of the things that they keep sharing in my work is leading with compassion, reminder, how we think about our students matter, how we talk about and describe our students matter, how we think about our colleagues matters, and how we talk and describe about our colleagues matter, words matter. And so like they keep bringing that back, like, you can't encourage a student to do well when you don't believe in them. You can't encourage a student to do well in a course if you think their teacher's not worth being there. And so that's just like a really big push. And then we do a lot of like, I think I'm kind of ridiculous, but like reading strategies and like just to like remind ourselves that we're humans and we can't pour from an empty cup.
Uh-oh, you're still there? Yes. Still on. Jasmine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I always like that analogy of when you're on the airplane and they say, put the oxygen on yourself first and then on your kids, and, you have to take care of yourself before you can be able to help the others too.
Maybe if we all took a trip there,
Yeah.
we would
For our-
want to come back to work
I
here.
think so. I
Here's
think
the-
our board retreat.
She did say a retreat is
Yes,
necessary.
yes, that was,
I don't know where it is, but it was
Before
beautiful.
June 30th is what I
Yes.
heard.
Yeah,
yes.
Yes.
Before the fiscal
And money
year.
is there,
Yeah.
available to use.
I think the Knicks counted in that too, right?
Yeah, it has to be.
You don't have to worry for long.
And so how you guys feel good about that? And then, and if you have anything else, like, send it to me. Even the quote, those things, like, this is gonna be us for a long time. So.
It's a good positive statement.
It is, yep.
one of the things I liked that she said right off was that the board and the superintendent are thinking partners, and, that is a really great analogy because a lot of people don't see it that way, and that's how it should be. They should be thinking partners working together, and the community needs to know and see that too.
I think, we have it recorded, right? And, how many people watch and know the work that gets in there, and I know, like I was, like Nick, we have these meetings that we just talk and we try to plan and we try to do that, it's like, there's no that, right? We gotta get it out there.
Every now and then I actually do get a text message or a call from somebody that says, hey, I was watching and what about this? So we don't see them watching us, we don't know it, but once in a while you get feedback that there are people watching, I know what's going on.
Do you send text messages in the group? Like,
I don't, the board can.
Yeah.
no, I mean, can you send a text message like you do to the community for things about the board meetings?
Oh, yeah, we absolutely
We do.
Yeah.
I've never got a text message
And maybe-
about a board meeting.
Maybe on this second and then, or the second and ninth, right? Those are our next study session board meetings. Can we say, hey, we invite you to come? And-
There should be a text message every time
Yeah.
that says,
Don't forget board
every
meetings.
community member is invited to.
Or here's a link to the,
Yeah.
Yeah, you do send out a message, but it goes to a select kind of group.
I don't know if we've done something about the board meetings.
I've never seen the
Yeah.
board meetings.
Yeah, you're right, it's not about board meetings, it's about other
Not on
things.
the group, I think you're right.
But that's a good idea.
It's just go to the phone.
I think that would be a good one. Like, please attend in person or virtually.
Yeah.
There you go. Right?
Yeah.
I would love that, because I've always forgot about it and said an hour later, darn it, I wish I logged in or something. So a reminder would be good.
Is there a way for people to send in their public comment to Megan if they cannot make it to the meeting?
Yeah, so we asked for that by Friday.
Oh, by Friday?
Yeah, and maybe we can put that out, hey, next week, no, there's a board meeting, if you have a public comment, or something, I can make something consistent, and so, good, going into it, yes, there was a public comment submitted, and we'll read that out, but,
Well, now that we have our new reader boards up.
yeah. What do you guys think about the reader boards?
Oh.
They're up.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Are they on? I've seen them, but are they
They're not on yet, they're,
Okay.
yeah,
Did I miss it?
but
Right
they're,
by that corner.
and I sat there and I looked at it, it's like, I wish, like, if we could turn it
I watched it.
11 degrees, I mean, just, a little more, and I was like, for the rest of my life, that's gonna bug me. At 11 degrees is gonna bug me, so.
But you should have been standing out there.
Yes, yeah, so, anyway, but no, I think it looks really good, so I get feedback from the community on it, like, so.
And you said the city was taking our old
Yeah.
ones? The city?
No, they decided the cost was too high,
Oh,
to retro and do all those things, so.
Saw a post that said something like rest in peace to the pencil, so
Yeah.
the pencil's been around for a long
Yeah.
time.
Well, and that's one of the things that we have mentioned is better communication, amongst staff, amongst us, with the staff, and with the community.
Well, that was important. I read in there, it was like, why did I get rid of the old ones? Half of it didn't work. Like, it was just like this and faded. You couldn't read anything, and been there for 30-some years, right? And so it was like, but just getting it out there and, sorry, well, they're working. It's no longer operating, doing its function of communicating to you, so. But yeah, we changed the words. So that's,
Yeah, I noticed that. I drive by it every day since they started that.
Yeah.
Tearing it up and putting it back up, but I still haven't seen it work on it, so. Just kidding. Yeah, it was chopped. Just got to do nice and much.
yeah.
That should go over well.
So Ryan, is there
Yeah.
any particular time you want our comments on this? And, I mean, you'll develop a time frame for being able to get all this together and meet again with Crystal.
I would like to, so I wanted to have a final by our June 9th meeting. And so, I mean, if we can have all feedback to me by the 2nd, that gives us 2 weeks, right? we're thinking about, right? We have 2 weeks, if I could have everything by the 2nd, that, I think it would be a good place for me to be
On
that.
this.
Yes. So, like I said, and I'll give you guys some kind of my ideas and some draft goals based on that as well. That will,
That'd be great, and then when we have our meeting on the admin on the 10th, we can have a final draft to go over and start getting things laid out for next year.
Because it would be nice to be able to, after we have our July meeting, or, you know, to do to plan. Because we actually need to plan, which is something we kind of neglected. The school year's barely ending, and we're already thinking about the next year.
I know.
Late or fast?
Way too fast.
we are already at 26, 27, so.
Kind of how it is.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Isn't it?
You're not at 28.
No, I mean, that's
That's
zero.
glorious.
Like, we've only, you know, we've been in 26, 27 for 2 months, we're, yeah, so.
So far behind.
so.
And June 3rd, drive-in at 7.
Yes, no, actually, so I said the staff show up about 8:15. You guys, since, like I said, you guys donated your time to, you know, cook burgers and serve. It shouldn't take too long. We'll have everything fired up, get there about 7:45, and then, so yeah, so you should be good.
7:45. Okay.
So we need to be there at 7:45.
Yeah, I think so.
What are you
That should
doing
give us
for
time.
grills?
That
Huh?
works.
What are you doing for grills?
Using the FFA one, that big one.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen the temperature?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, so we're gonna be using that one. And, so we'll literally have everything set up for you guys. So, and I think Noble's gonna get his hands in there and he's gonna be helping split up, so. But yeah,
Oh, he is? That's great.
we'll be ready.
He hasn't changed his mind yet.
Yeah.
And Nick, we would like to invite you, it's our, it's the staff celebration.
Year-end celebration,
Year-end
yeah.
celebration.
Bring your whole family, June 3rd.
It's at the Corner Drive-In.
Okay, I can pick you up from the airport if we fly back really quick.
Should have dropped in a parachute.
What is the movie?
I think it is, we're 98% sure it's the new Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, yes, I want to see
know.
it.
I know, that was a cute one.
Yeah.
They've got a good family lineup for like the first month of opening.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I think that's
What was it again?
Huh?
What was it?
The new
Lilo and
Lilo and
Stitch.
Stitch, the live action one. So,
No, I think that's right. I think my daughter and we're going to watch that Saturday night.
yeah.
Tell her to save her money and just come to the drive-in.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
watch it fun.
Her brother and stuff invited her, so it's kind of, they're doing their thing for graduation. That's all
I've
it
never
is.
been to a drive-in before, so we,
What?
I've never been. I'm not a big movie person.
Oh,
Really?
it's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was much cooler when they had
Here's
those
a door.
posts by the window.
Well, then I just won't show up, okay? And then I'll go the rest of my life not go.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll just
So
park
we need
next
to
to
be
you
there
and
by
talk to you the whole time.
That's all right. Either you or somebody else.
Okay, is there anything else before we recess into the regular portion, the board report portion of our meeting, and then we will, y'all can be adjourned and we'll go into executive session. Okay. In that case, we will move away from board training, and we will move on into the board report of our work session. Legislative updates. And I only brought this out because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And over on this side of the state, we oftentimes don't hear about it. The bill banning cell phones in schools is dead. However, it's been said that Governor Kotek may sign an executive order to ban cell phones in schools. We don't know. But-
democracy fails, you can just do whatever you want, is
To
the
cheer
head
us
of government.
So, yeah, so, but anyway, that's, you know, that's just something to be aware of. There is a bill to add climate change as a required discussion subject in the school curriculum. And there is the question of how do we fit that in with everything
Yeah,
else?
in
that's
every
required?
subject.
Oh, in every subject.
In every subject.
I thought it was just social studies.
Yeah,
Well,
no, it's
no,
in,
we
it's in
gotta
every
figure it
subject.
out, math and, you know, everything, so that's something, you know, be aware of, and it's still out there, correct?
It's still out there. I don't know how much traction it's getting because, I mean, obviously when you think of like adding that to curriculum, you think of money and, you know, and the infrastructure for that and you need to add. And so I think without all of those questions asked, it's not gaining a lot of momentum. However, it hasn't died yet. And so just to know. So.
I think algebra does kill baby seals.
Yeah, no, that's actually, that's true, that's science too.
That's science.
And there is also a bill in Oregon to give striking workers unemployment benefits. And the reason that impacts us is simply because, remember all those teachers who went on strike over in the valley? If this bill passes, then the school district's going to have to take money that should be used to educate children to pay striking workers. So, you know, this is just something that's out there that I think that's worthwhile our thinking about. The last one is the House of Representatives passed the big, beautiful budget bill. I don't know if it'll go through the Senate, but we should be aware that one of the things that federal legislation does is cut Medicaid. We have there are a lot of families on Medicaid in Oregon. Where is that money going to be funded from? Possibly from education. Plus, I understand this budget bill also cuts out some of the SNAP food items. So that's another, you know, it's just something that's out there that may impact us in the future.
And know that, I mean, with Medicaid, a lot of school districts do get reimbursed for Medicaid. And so we don't in our district. So
No, but our ESD does.
our ASD does, and so there will be a large economic impact in education because of that Medicaid, which will reverberate through, right? And so just for you guys to know.
So we get not a cut of Medicaid, but we get money for having a percentage of families on Medicaid, or
No,
how's that?
we have billable services through Medicaid, so we have like OT, PT, speech therapy.
Okay.
Those things that we actually can get reimbursed. Yeah, I get reimbursed for that, and so a lot of districts actually, they do fund those services because of the Medicaid revenue.
Okay.
And so, I mean, millions of dollars in some districts, and so thinking about cutting that, right, that will lower there, and then, I mean, we're like the secondary effect of it because we don't use it, but their budgets are short, right, and then so it's gonna bleed all the way through. Just for you to know that there's a lot of those things on the outside that we're really well insulated, but we'll still impact us.
And, you know, those are just kinds of, as I said, things I think we need to think about. Not that they're pleasant, but, you know, things we need to think about. And is there anything else other than graduation's coming up on Sunday? It's at 1 o'clock. Board members are requested to be there at 12:45 in the foyer in front of the auditorium. Someone will take us by the hand and line us up.
Mrs. Reese?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, she will be, well, she usually is in the auditorium, like cracking the whip on the seniors. And so, but she will make sure, but we'll have, you know, boutonnieres for everybody and more flowers for everybody. So just to know that you guys have your seat reserved, flowers reserved
Supposed
for
to
you.
wear little lanyards.
No, just come dressed nicely and,
Oh, we have to be dressed nicely.
you don't have to, I guess.
Sweats or something.
I thought we were
Yeah.
doing black tie. Don't have the tux.
I know, that's, again, I mean, you set the example, so I mean, that's it. So-
Make sure to tear the sleeves off your
Oh,
shirts.
please do.
Oh,
Were
yeah.
you guys there that year when the graduate like tore his sleeves
Yeah.
off?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. That's fine.
So yeah, so no, everything is set for you guys to be there 12:45. I would probably come a little earlier than that for parking and those things. I'm gonna walk here, obviously, but just for you guys to know,
So we should all park over at your house.
you absolutely can. We can skip over here. So,
I
but
usually
yeah.
park at the middle school.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
I do too.
yeah,
By the tennis courts.
yeah. And there's- especially when you leave too, it's easier that way through. And so, yeah, no, that's it.
Okay, is there anything else you want to ask or whatever? Okay, then we will recess into our executive session.
And then so I will be here, so then when we're done, so we don't clean up everything, just let us know. And then, because we have to turn back on the camera as well to exit, so.
Yes. Nick, thanks for coming.
Thank God.
You got it?
I'm gonna try to do it.
Okay. Push the green one that will not be red. Nick, thanks for being here.